Good afternoon, everybody. This is Bonnie Vandermeulen, Training Coordinator for Wisconsin Facets. We'd like to welcome you to our webinar today entitled School Choice Programming in Wisconsin. Our speaker for today is Terry Brown. Terry is the Vice President of School Choice Wisconsin, a nonpartisan statewide organization dedicated to advancing private and religious school choice. Currently, Terry is working with school leaders, private and religious school boards, and parents to maximize the participation of families and schools in Wisconsin's parental school choice programs. It is my pleasure today to introduce to you Terry Brown. Terry?
Glad to be here. Thanks very much. I've been working on with various school choice groups for a number of years, about 22 years now that I've been helping out, and so I love what I do, and of course we all love the kids in the state of Wisconsin. So let's just go forward here, and I'll move to the initial slide, and we can start learning a little bit more about school choice, and always feel free to ask questions. School choice in 2020-21, so this current school year, we have about 125,000 Wisconsin students who attend a private or religious school in the state. And as of this year, about almost 46,000 of those 125 students attend private schools with a voucher provided by the state of Wisconsin. There are 4 separate programs that have been created over the years. So the first one was the Milwaukee Parental Choice Program, which began in 1990, and then that was originally only available to non-religious schools, but then that was expanded later on in 1997, I believe. So then the religious schools were also allowed into the program, and we have a pretty vigorous religious school footprint in the state, and so it grew pretty quickly, especially after the religious schools were allowed in. And so we have this year 131 schools with nearly 28,600 students that are participating in the Milwaukee program. So that's more than 30 years old, and continues to chug forward. The Racine Parental Program, so we have a big gap here between 1990 and 2011. There was no expansion of school choice outside of Milwaukee, but the first expansion was the Racine Parental Choice Program, which essentially is only available to those students who live within the school district of Racine. So 25 private and religious schools participate, and about just under 4,000 students in 2020-21. Now the fastest growing program it would be the Wisconsin Parental Choice Program. So far we have 280 schools this year with about 12,000 plus students, and so pretty significant growth, but that's because we're growing on a lower base. So but each year we're adding something like 1,500 to 2,000 students each year participate in the Wisconsin Parental Choice Program. So that's most of the state, right? So the Wisconsin Parental Choice Program is the entire area of the state except for the school district of Milwaukee, and then the Racine School District. So everything else in the state, everywhere from Algoma to Beloit and across the state, those families that are joining are all part of the Wisconsin Parental Choice Program. And then we have a special needs scholarship program as well, and that was created in 2015. And we have 106 schools participating, and we have 1,425 students that are currently being served through the special needs scholarship program within the state. Any questions so far?
No questions so far.
Okay, And so the Wisconsin Parental Choice Program is helps fund parents to be able to attend the private and religious schools. For this current school year, 2020, 2021, there's $8,300 that will support a K through 8 student, and then $89.46 for the high school, which is sufficient funding for the grade school, but really not for the high school. So the high schools, while they get a generous voucher from the state, they still have to, all the high schools have to do a lot of fundraising to keep up with the more expensive part of the school landscape, which is high schools. Okay, and then we won't know what the voucher payment amounts will be for next year until the state budget is complete. And so every 2 years we have a state budget, a biennial budget, so 2 years, and we'll be starting to work on that as to we'll be working on that to determine and help guide folks in making decisions at the legislature that will support both the public school increases and increases for the private schools. So essentially what we have is whatever the increase of the public schools on a per pupil basis will be in each of the years of the biennial budget. We essentially, with the private schools, also get the same, relatively the same increase each year. So while there's more funding for the public schools, they have, in many cases, they have, other needs that are expensive that they need to take care of. So they do receive a larger set of funds from the state. But as they grow, we grow, and we're all trying to do what everybody wants to do, which is to make sure that everybody has a great education and in all the different districts. So I myself, I went to I went to religious school, St. Pius X in Wauwatosa, and then went on to Wauwatosa East High School, and eventually ended up at the University of Wisconsin. So I'm pretty much a lifer, and we all want what's best for everybody and every kid within the state. And then programs are limited to specific adjusted gross incomes. So we don't have that in the public schools, but we do have it in the private schools. So the programs are limited in the Wisconsin program, which remember is all of the state outside of Milwaukee and Racine. It's 220% of poverty, of the federal poverty numbers. Those were just updated, and we'll see those in the next slide. And then it's 300% of poverty for the Milwaukee Parental Choice Program and the Racine Parental Choice Program. So the Milwaukee program is the most widely available. So almost anyone who qualifies economically can make use of a voucher. There's some limits on the parental choice program in the Wisconsin Parental Choice Program, and in the Racine program, it's still at 300% of poverty, but they have a shorter window in which to recruit students. But anyway, everybody works hard, and we just keep moving forward and trying to do the right thing for all the kids in the state. Okay, and then so in the current year, I'm going to spend a chunk of the time here on the Wisconsin Parental Choice Program. And so that program is still limited to a percentage of students who can participate in the program. So there are some school districts like the Watertown School District where even in the coming year, there may not be any new vouchers for students because just the dynamics of what's going on in places like Watertown, Wisconsin. But the long and the short of it is up to 6% of the eligible students, 6% of the total number of students in, say, like Watertown or Wauwatosa or Anago or wherever, up to 6% of the students are eligible to go to the private school and through school choice. And those schools can also draw those students from multiple school districts. So 6% I'm from southeastern Wisconsin. I live in Wauwatosa, so 6% of Wauwatosa students could attend the private schools in the school district of Wauwatosa with a voucher. We're not anywhere near that in most of the state of Wisconsin. There's just a few, I think it's about 4 districts that are actually near that 6% cap, okay? And that goes up by 1% per year until we reach 10%, and then after that, there would be no limit on the program. Now, those limits are in place because we want to make sure that if there is any change in the demographics that and the participation in the program, we just want to make sure that if there is some movement from the public school to the religious school, that we make sure that there's only a 1% increase per year so that the districts can adjust and the private schools can adjust, okay? So remember, I was telling you that there's 2 different sets of the percentage of federal poverty. So 220% is what we have in all of Wisconsin outside of Milwaukee and Racine. And as you can see, there could be a family size of 1 that would be a child who was foster care or whatever the case might be. And that happens not infrequently, but not so common. And then we have the qualifying incomes for those families who would have, let's say, 2. So there'd be 2 in the family size. 2 in the family size would mean there is 1 child and 1 parent. Now, either there could be a divorce or whatever the case might be, and if there was a divorce, then the 2 parents, each parent could potentially apply for the program. And then once we get to a family size of 3, that would indicate that there could be a married family, and then maybe not a married family. So that family size of 3, if mom and dad are separated or are separated from each other, then we could have in the single column 1 parent and 2 children. And then for those family size of 3, if it would be 2 parents and 1 child, then there's that married income. There is an additional $7,000 on the limit of that is added, so that at some point one of the legislators felt that it was necessary to have an additional $7,000 for married income as some sort of push or to help people stay married, right? Stay married and go forward. So then we just go down the list. We have $57,000 for a family of 4. That would be, if that's a single income, that's 1 parent and 3 children, et cetera, and then off to $64,640 for a married income, and that's that $7,000 additional bump. Okay, so most of what I see when I'm out working with people, most of the families are married. Some are not, and then it's somewhere between 4 and 5. So families typically seems from what I see, a couple kids or 3 kids, but there are other places where people would have 4, 5, 6 kids as well. Okay, so I don't want to belabor this point. I just want you to see what the numbers actually are for whether you're married or single income. And then for each additional child, I'm one of 8 kids, and so we could add then, if back in the day, we could have added 9856 to each of these numbers. And so you don't see those big families like where I grew up, but that's fine. We just move along, right? Okay. And then 300% of poverty for both Milwaukee and Racine. There you can see there's a significant difference in the amount of funding or the qualifying incomes for the family. So 51,720, we've already talked about that, would be 1 parent and 1 child. And then we go down the list. So family of 4 is there's a pretty great difference when, let's look at the four family size. We're going from 57,600 to 78,600. So that's a lot of money. So that 300% it helps include a lot more families in the Racine program and the Milwaukee program. Okay. And then I won't belabor the point. If you have any questions on these numbers or wondering how that all works, I can answer your questions at the ready. Okay. And so who is eligible to participate in the Wisconsin Parental Choice Program? Remember I said Milwaukee's pretty much wide open. Racine is pretty much wide open. They've been in there enough years that they've, cleared the decks, et cetera. But normally that there is that private school students enrolling in 4K, 5K, and first or ninth are the only grades that could be, that they could access. If you're already a private school student, there is a process for the private school students to remove the grade restrictions for a period of 2 years by using what's called a combined schools agreement. And that's where a newly entering school partners with an already participating private school. And then they work together with the two boards kind of work together from one school and the second school. So those private school students can, in many cases, if they're just participating in the first year, they can go for 2 years without any grade level restrictions for the private school students. So that helps the schools be allowed to to bring kids in over the first couple of years and make sure we give access to the kids with as much generosity as possible. Okay, so then what happens on family income? So remember I showed you all these income levels. When you apply for the program, when a family applies for the program, let's say they have 2 school-age students, little ones, and once when they apply for the program, they have to prove what their adjusted gross income is on their federal tax forms. Okay, so it's limited to the adjusted gross income. In the case of the Wisconsin program, that's 220% of poverty. If they are able to receive a voucher, then in subsequent years we don't check their for that child, not for the family as a whole, but for the child that's entering the program. If they qualify economically, then in subsequent years we do not check what the family income is for that child. Now, let's say there's other little ones in the house that will be coming in subsequent years. If mom and dad's adjusted gross income goes above the limits that are allowable, then it could be that the first 2 kids get in, and then there's anyways. When they come in subsequent years, it's possible that 1 or 2 or however many kids may not get a voucher because they've added additional jobs or whatever the case might be, and so at that point you could have a difference even within the family as who can get in and who can get out. But what we do say for sure is that if you already have a voucher, we will not take it away from you because the family did better. But the subsequent kids in subsequent years, they may not be able to get into the program on a voucher, and that's just the way it works, right? Okay, and then as you can see on the bottom, the once and always in provision applies only if a student continues to attend a school in a parental choice program and does not voluntarily leave the program. So if a family leaves the program for whatever reason, we've had lots of families moving around this year trying to figure out which is the best for their kids. But if they had a voucher and they left to go to the public schools, then they would have to wait until the 9th grade to apply again for a voucher. Okay. And then how do schools and parents apply for the program? They must apply to participate in the in the Wisconsin Parental Choice Program by January 10th of 2021. That just passed this past weekend. And so right now they're just, working with DPI to start determining who's eligible, and they go through lots of training, et cetera. And so they're all getting ready to make sure that they have a sharp and ready process to go forward. Okay, so the application process itself is done online, and that can and then that is from that. Each year the numbers may be different because we don't include the weekends, but this year will be from February 1st to April 15th of 2021. So each school has to find the schools that they think, or find the kids who they think might qualify for the program, work with the parents and see if they're interested in joining the program. And usually I would say it's not unusual to see somewhere between 20 and 40% of the school children could qualify for a voucher. Okay, and so we just work to help those parents understand the process, and the schools do a good job. They get trained very well by the Department of Public Instruction, and so we go ahead with signing folks up. All right. And then when someone applies for the program, they have to select the schools or schools to which they wish to apply. So they could apply to multiple schools, or they could just choose the one that happens to be their local private school. So, but they have the ability to apply to more than one school at a time. Ultimately, after the 15th of April, they will have to decide if they receive a voucher. They will have to decide which school they're choosing for their child. And after completing the online application, the parent and guardian must provide proof that they meet residency and, as I mentioned before, income requirements at each school to which they've applied. Okay, and so that means usually what people are doing is either bringing their tax, the prior year tax form in. So for this year, they would be looking at their 2020. They can go back to their 2019 taxes as well. So they just have to provide proof that is held at the proof of income is held at the local school, local private school, and then we have auditors that the schools are required to employ. So certified public accountants are monitor all the applications and monitor and proving that the income and residency documents are correct, and then again we go forward. So schools must be fully accredited in December of the third year of their program. They do not need to be initially accredited, but they have to finish by December of the third year of their participation in the program. So most schools are jumping on board already ahead of participating in the program by getting their accreditation done, but they're able to work through that for the roughly 2.5 years that it takes to get into to finish that accreditation timeline. Okay,
Terry,
so
we do have a question for you. It went to discussion of the residency and multiple schools that you could apply for. Mm-hmm. So do those multiple schools would have to be within a certain jurisdiction or residency area, or is it statewide and the residency requirement is of the state of Wisconsin?
So the residency requirement is the state of Wisconsin. But if you are in the Wisconsin Parental Choice Program, you can't access the Milwaukee program or the Racine program, right? And then let's say, for instance, let's talk about, let's just say Madison. So Madison, you could have families that reside in Madison, and then they can find a private school that will accept students from the Madison school district. And you could also have a Madison resident apply to go outside of the district, but the district will be the one, along with with state aid. they can go to a school outside of their own resident district, but the resident district will participate in funding the child. So the child could be a student in Wisconsin with a voucher, residency in a specific school district, let's say the Madison School District, but that doesn't mean they couldn't choose to go to Middleton, let's say. So does that clear things up by any chance?
I think so. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, and then just like, so the state laws, we have to provide a sequentially progressive curriculum of fundamental instruction in reading, language arts, mathematics, social studies, science, and health. So those same requirements are required of the private school as well, okay? Now, because we have religious schools and because the state of Wisconsin has always protected religious liberty, then we have this subsection that does not require the programming of the school. So in their teaching within the school, they don't have to include in its curriculum any concept or topic or practice in conflict with the program's religious doctrines, or to exclude from its curriculum any concept, topic, or practice consistent with the program's religious doctrines. So in other words, if something is onerous to the religious school, you don't have to teach it, but you can also teach things that other people might not agree with, right? So it's just part of essentially the religious liberty of all the families in Wisconsin. Okay. Now it's hard. So if I am in Milwaukee and I want to get a voucher, I might want to look at every school, right, and go forward. They don't, someone could say maybe I don't really care so much about the religion in the school, et cetera, but they just want a particular school with maybe whatever they see as necessary to advance their own kids and students. And so in certain areas, people don't pick their private school based or private religious school based on a particular religious doctrine. But you might see that more in the Wisconsin program, because the Wisconsin program, back when I was a kid, if I was a religious school kid like I was, I went there. I went to a Catholic school for grade school, and then I went to a public school, Tosa East, for high school. And so everybody they can make their own decisions. But ultimately, I think what you see more in the Wisconsin program is families will choose the religious school that they already make contact with. Okay.
Terry, I have another question for
Sure.
you. The questioner writes, I have an 8th grader in 2021. I am only able to apply for Wisconsin Choice for the next school year, for his freshman year. Could I wait a year and then send the child to the public school for the freshman year and then apply for choice for her sophomore year?
Okay, so if the student is currently an 8th grade student, is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, I believe so. It says eighth grade student for the year 2021.
2021. And okay, so if they're already in a private school, then they're likely not going to be able to receive a voucher. So that's a great question. So we take the school attendance twice per year, the third Friday in September and the third Friday in the second Friday in January. So we only count, how many kids are in a school or in a school district or in the private school. We only do that twice per year. But at any rate, if they are a 9th grader now, then they will not be able to get a voucher. If they're in a private school now, they will not be able to get a voucher for 10, 11, 12.
Okay, so I think that this says that they have an 8th grader for this year.
If they have an 8th grader for this year, then they can apply for 9th grade this coming fall, right? And then they want it. So if they are an 8th grader this year, this school year, then they want to get to see if they can have a voucher for 9th grade. Then they would want to, during that period of February 1st to April 15th, they want to contact the schools that participate in the program in their area and to see whether this is going to be the right fit for them. So
I think the other inherent question here is if this child goes to public school in the 9th grade, and they're in the 8th grade now, can she apply now for the child's sophomore year?
No. So if they're a private school student, if they're coming from a private school, if they're a district student, they can get a voucher at any grade level. But there are restrictions only for private school kids. So a current 8th grader for the 2021 school year, they can apply for a voucher for the 9th grade in 2021, 2022, right? Private school, so yeah, private school students are restricted, but public school students can gain access to a voucher at any grade level.
Okay, I think that was it, and I'll ask the questioner if she has further comments to just send the question to me again. Thank you.
Okay. Sure. Okay, and then the private schools do not receive federal financial assistance at the grade levels. So there's again some more religious liberty tenets that are part of our laws within the state of Wisconsin. Okay, so now that we've talked about religious instruction several times, can parents opt their children out of religious instruction? And the answer is yes. It doesn't happen often, and it's more likely to happen if in some districts, school districts that might be struggling, and so parents might want to go to any of the private or religious schools. They'd rather go there than the district, and of course, that's few and far between in Wisconsin. We have such great school systems. But at any rate, the parents can opt their children out of formal religious instruction and worship. The parents, few parents, once they enter the program, choose to exercise that option, right? Because once you get out of southeastern Wisconsin, et cetera, some other places, once you get out of there, people are, it's still like when I grew up, that, if you don't, everybody had the chance to go to the public school, but they might also have chosen their specific religious denomination private school that is within a distance that they feel is comfortable. Okay, so and then most schools never receive a request to opt out of religious instruction, and the reality is that when in religious schools they teach the doctrine normally, but it's always in reference to their own religious beliefs, right? So the religiosity of the school is real. I've probably visited 300 some schools over the last few years, and they all look like you would imagine, and greatly done like we all do in Wisconsin. Okay, and so we encourage schools to remain true to their mission and culture and continue to imbue their curriculum with the teachings and values of their faith. That is a positive statement and is not meant to denigrate anybody else's religious beliefs either. Okay, so and then you continue to display all your symbols of the faith in the hallways, classrooms. You pray together in school, and et cetera, et cetera. So by and large, all the schools that participate in the program, almost all of them are religious schools. Okay, and then can schools suspend and expel students that violate school policies or procedures? And the answer is yes. So, but you can't treat anybody differently because they might participate in the parental choice program or they're a private pay student. Everybody has to be treated equally. And then there's some things within the school handbooks that have to be written out to protect families and protect the students, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. But while there may be suspensions and expulsions along the way, it hardly ever happens. Usually you can work with the family to make sure that everybody can understand what the rules are and then find a happy home at the school that they're at. Okay, and then our handbooks and written policies have to be explicit, and they need to be provided to all the families that participate in the parental choice program. Okay, and there's some specific issues that are separate. For instance, certain things about being able to exempt themselves from religious instruction. Those are all explicit for parents so they understand what their rights are in terms of participating in the program. But everybody gets a copy of the handbooks and the written policies, and so we encourage parents to make sure they're making the right decision, especially if there's changing from one school to the next, okay? And once a student is enrolled and accepted in the school, they are bound by the school policies, right? So I ran a private school, or led a private school on the south side of Milwaukee for about 9 years, St. Anthony in Milwaukee. And we increased student attendance from under 300 to 300 students to 1,450 students at the school. Obviously not in one school building. We had to provide additional spots, but we have just great schools throughout the state, and some people like me, I just want to ask everybody, why don't you join my school and see what the answer is? But the long and the short of it is we have great schools, and we don't see a lot of suspensions or expulsions or any of these procedures. Okay. And then you should have a signed document stating that that the older students have read the handbooks and policies. So just think of high school students. Otherwise, at the grade schools, they're not bringing out the handbook. They're bringing the handbook to the parent, not to the student itself. Okay. And then and then we'll just go on. You have to supply parents with a copy of the handbooks, including the procedures the school has in place for appeal of suspensions and expulsions. Okay, and then our school is required to service special needs students. So remember I mentioned that there is a special needs scholarship program with, what was it, maybe 1,700 kids, and that keeps growing every year. So that's a separate program from the Milwaukee program, from the Wisconsin, for Milwaukee, Wisconsin, or the Milwaukee program, the Wisconsin program, and the Racine program. It's separate, and so it has its own rules and et cetera. So while in the regular voucher program, the child is only required, the school is only required to offer those services assisting students with special needs that it can provide with minor adjustments. So with minor adjustments is how it is in private schools, whether they're in the program or not. So in other words, someone has a speech therapy problem, you work with the district, et cetera, or somebody, it goes, if it goes any majorly beyond what is normal for assisting the students in the school, then we have to work to help the children receive a special needs scholarship, which is just under $13,000. And that way, the district can help with their part of it. So the local district can help with their speech therapy needs or whatever other needs they have, but also the school itself, the private school, can receive funds to add additional services on top of what the district would normally give. Okay, so the district has federal funds that are set aside, and a portion of those federal funds are required to go assist private school students. And let's say I'll make it up, 10% of the money that the federal government sends to the district. I'm making it up again. I'm not sure exactly what the numbers would be at any particular place, but let's just say 10% of it has to be reserved to assist kids with speech therapy or what have you. Okay, and then but if it goes up and beyond, then we're going to move to and work with the parents to see if they can get a special needs scholarship. I believe that with the special needs program, it doesn't, we're talking about the usual things that happen, right? And so if it's if we have a specific disability, that's when we can trigger additional help and additional money for the students. But I don't believe, I'm 99% sure that when it's the behavioral issues and things like that, that is not included in the special needs scholarship program. Okay, so I had a daughter who was speech therapy through the 7th grade. And so so I had her at St. Anthony at the time, and then we eventually moved her to the Wauwatosa schools. And in both places, everybody was super helpful in making sure that those children succeeded. Okay. And then
so Terry, we have another question, and that was, let's say, for example, as you're discussing this student that might need special services like speech therapy, are those services provided by the religious or private school, or do they depend on the services from the public school for those specialty services?
Most of those specialty services up and beyond what the district is required to do, that's mostly done by other service providers, not the district.
So then the religious or private schools contract with outside specialists to help, as opposed to having someone from the public schools come in and help them?
Yeah, they're free to do one or the other, and they're also free to make a hybrid out of it. But yeah, so they'll get a specific amount of money. So for instance, if the school is, let's say a grade school, a K-8 kid, they're getting $8,300 as the payment for participating in the program with the regular. So the $8,300 is the regular school program. And then let's say then we had, let's say 12,000, well, make it $13,000. Then the difference between the 8,300 and the 12,000, then we can use that money to help a specific child or multiple children get additional services beyond what the district already provides. I hope that's understandable.
Well, and that doesn't necessarily refer to the special needs scholarship. This is just regular enrollment in the religious or schools via the voucher program.
Okay, so if the parents place their child into the private school, and the private school determines that there is, along with the district helping with the determine what the needs of the child are, the parents can receive a voucher that then will be used not to assist all the children in the school, but to assist the particular child in the school. Okay, so in other words, someone like needed additional speech therapy beyond what the district did, then they could have roughly, let me think about this. So they would have 13, 14, they could have $4,000 in additional money that comes in for that specific child. And then they can work with the parents to see, okay, this is what we can do with the money that we have available. And, we can assist those children that have, more than the usual speech therapy and whatever.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, okay. All right, and then, so we don't want any gouging, right? And so schools can collect fees from students in the choice program, but it mimics what we have for all the states. So in other words, a private school may charge choice students reasonable fees for personal items such as towels, gym clothes, social and extracurricular activities, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, meals, high school classes not required or credited for accredited for graduation. So that's the same, that's part of the law within the state of Wisconsin for all indigent children. So indigent children cannot be charged a fee for certain things on the second section, but for the private school, they can charge a fee. So in the second section, a choice student may not be charged a fee for registration or application to the choice program for books or teachers or salaries, buildings, maintenance, etc. So that's all included with their voucher. Okay, so maintenance, equipment, computers, those are all things that you have to have in place to run a school. And so we can't, we have to make sure that we don't charge fees for those types of things. So for instance, they can, so students could be charged for extracurricular activities because that's not required by the state, right? You're not required to participate in extracurricular activities. We certainly hope that everybody gets involved with extracurricular activities, but once it's outside the actual school date, the money that the state is sending is meant to take care of and pay for the ordinary programming of the school. And then anything that takes place outside the school hours, then that's at the point where the parents will have to pay a fee. Now let's be realistic. If a family is struggling, most schools are not going to say you can't play whatever. You can't participate in volleyball because you can't pay the fee. You know, most schools are going to do everything they can to make sure everybody is treated equally. But ultimately, the law says that that they can charge additional fees for specific programs. And then what's the estimated cost for the first year of the school? It's about 10 to 20,000 for annual financial and operating audits. And then there's a $300 application fee that's due to the DPI that changes every year. It actually goes down every year because each year that we add more students, then this $300 annual application fee to the school goes down. And so and then the cost of a student information system, if they don't have a robust student information system, then, you know, it goes from $2,500 and keeps going up, depending upon exactly what you need. You know, some things would cost $10,000 to implement, but most schools, if they're just entering, are going to find the program that is cost effective for the school. So you ask, like, so what is this 10 to 20,000 for annual financial and operating audits? So the state requires that we have a generally accepted accounting principles audit on the school each year. So at the end of each year, the auditors will audit the books of each individual school, and they will ensure through their process that that all the funds were accounted for correctly. Okay, so I would say we're looking at, and then there's annual process things like we have to have the folder. In the folder, we have to have the diploma for a master, or not a master's degree, but a bachelor's degree. So anybody who's teaching in the school as the lead teacher in a class, every one of those classes has to have a degreed teacher. And then for the aides, they have to have either had a high school diploma or its equivalency in the equivalency with a bachelor, or not a bachelor's, but a high school diploma. So so there's all sorts of processes that go on with the auditors during the year to ensure, again, as they're moving through the year, they're making sure that everybody is completing their work correctly, that all the financials are watched and allocated correctly, and then so that annual audit is going to cost about $15,000 to $17,000 per year, and so that's, you know, you have 3 kids, that's, barely going to pay for the audit. And so that's why, in these first years, if they can participate in the combined schools agreement and bring more kids in the initial years, then we get a more efficient process going within the school. So, like I say, so if we have internal audits, just making sure that everybody's doing things correctly within the program. So the auditors will come multiple times in the fall and multiple times in the spring, just to do audits on the processes of the program. And then at the end, after the school year ends, in the first year that the schools participate, so not prior to participation, but after participation, they'll have the gap audit, the generally accepted audit principles audit, anywhere between July 1st and into the middle of the fall. And the first year is sometimes an uncomfortable situation, but once people have been through it once, they understand exactly how the process works going forward in the next couple of years. So we have about 8 minutes left. I wonder if anybody has any more questions or anything I can clarify.
No, not at this time. I don't see any other questions. We'll get people to ask any if they still have any in the next minute or so. But as a closing thought then, Terry, if we have no other questions, is there anything else you'd like to say for our audience today?
Just feel free to call School Choice Wisconsin if you have questions about your specific family and your specific children. And I can be reached at Brown, like the color, Brown at Parent Choice, parent is singular, parentchoice.org. And we would be happy to help you with any questions you might have about the program. So Brown, like the color, at parentchoice.org.
Well, thank you very much, Terry. We greatly appreciate your presentation today. We do not have any other questions at this time. So I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today. Please be reminded that Wisconsin Facets has over 100 scheduled trainings and webinars for 2021. And please feel free to check out our website calendar and register for any of the upcoming trainings that you may be interested in. Also, please watch for the short evaluation coming your way after today's live presentation. Again, Terry, thank you very much today for your presentation. And thank you everybody for joining us. Bye-bye, everybody.